Hello. How are you?
Very well. How are you?
Good.
Come on through. We could take a look at the garden.
Great.
You have all greens in your teeth.
That's probably from all the parsley.
He's been mowing the lawn.
How much do I have?
A fair amount.
Just don't smile at the camera. Be like, why does that guy never smile?
It is what it is. Okay. There's a lot.
Oh yeah, you definitely have some greens.
Let me deal with that. Give me just a second.
Yeah.
Have you always actually lived here? Or did you have another place beforehand, before you got this place?
I've lived here since 2005.
Okay, right on.
And then, but I worked waiting tables for a long time, and I didn't have these kind of gardens. And then Sean and I met in 2013, and then he moved in ultimately, and we started like doing more stuff like this.
Oh, okay. So you lived here then, and he moved in.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. So then, who was the main gardenpreneur? Who was the one who instigated the gardens?
Well, I think you had the huge interest in developing gardens here, and I think I helped kind of move that forward.
Yeah, you helped move it forward.
We'll say it that way.
That's a very generous way to say it.
I mean, we both are very involved in the garden and the gardening here. It's like become this very complex mix between what is partially nursery work, what is our annual foods, and then beautiful flowers and support for wildlife and that kind of thing. So it's become this like wild scene that I think overall we love, and then we also are trying to figure out like how to make more productive and more organized at some point.
Can you show us around, and you can maybe point out some of the things where you're like, hey, I think this is something that we're doing really well, or this has been something that we've learned, and and just kind of take us through?
Yeah, sure.
That's great.
You've got bread going, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Do that first and then come back out.
Yeah.
Or
turn this off.
This way he won't record you talking to the bread.
And then you can put that in your pocket so you don't get caught on something.
Okay.
So the question was what? Things that have been working well?
Yeah, take us through your garden, and and if there's things that you feel like have been a challenge, or that you like, or that you feel like you're going to be working on. I see some elderberries kind of popping up here. You got a lot of stuff.
Yeah. I think if there's an overarching theme to this garden or the work we do in general, it's about really high diversity and really high density, with the hope of lots of positive interrelationships, but there's not very explicit design that's happening. What I would say that overall feels really good about this system is that pattern as a driver lends itself very well to like a high level of resilience. Like we end up in the fall, since we are a perennial plant nursery, we hope to have lots of plants for sale in the fall. And since we don't actually use well water to irrigate, and this has been a crazy dry season.
Very dry.
So a lot of these beds have gotten next to no water whatsoever. And so in a way, it's like that everybody jammed together, even though it can feel chaotic to our eye, or sometimes from a management standpoint, it's stressful or it's draining to try to know what to do. At the end of the season, we end up with a lot of plants. So
it looks like some of the stuff has been planted, but do some things just kind of volunteer and you let them volunteer, or?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a mix. Like, for example, this bed right in front of us is pretty curated, at least till we get to the west end of it, and it gets feral again. But there is some design happening here. So, for example, these are all Seaberry or sea buckthorn. It's an amazing nitrogen-fixing shrub. And ultimately, if these were left here, these get 10 to 15 feet tall, so that would not work. So they're here for a season, they've rooted, and so we'll dig them up in the fall. Even though we sell and work with perennials, because we're cycling through them, they behave in the garden kind of like an annual. So like a chestnut tree, which could be 12 feet in diameter and live forever kind of thing, if it's dug up in the fall, it could have also been a beet. So, so there's like this weird rotation. So we've got Seaberry, which is fixing nitrogen and being really drought resistant in the middle, and then tarragon all to the south of it because it likes a little bit more sun. And the Seaberry is providing nitrogen and supporting the tarragon. And then all through here are saffron crocus that are dormant right now, but they'll come back again and give us saffron in the fall. So this is a bed that's actually kind of designed, or it would seem really intentional, but then you get to come down to this side and you're like, okay, there's random poplars and there's this random mint.
You have a lot of poplars here.
Yeah, and so we're going to now offer them through our website.
Yeah.
You know, we've got tulip poplars, we've got sycamores. We're a very wet site fundamentally. And
I see that, because even though it did rain recently, but there's a sponginess to the earth here.
That's the mulch.
Yeah.
You're standing on about 8 inches of sawdust.
Wow.
And so that's part of what gives the resiliency, is incredible deposition of material. So when we do get a rain, the garden does not leak.
Yeah.
You know, you get like 2 inches of rain, most of it will stay in the mulch.
How long did it take you to build up that 8 inches of sawdust? Is it over the course of a year, or?
We've gotten in the past 37-yard loads of sawdust, which is basically, it fills our whole driveway. It's hundreds of wheelbarrow loads. And so the pattern is basically digging out the garden walkways and putting that on the beds in the fall to mulch them and to rest and break down, and then refilling those troughs of the walkways with fresh mulch. And so sometimes it's sawdust, sometimes it's wood chips, sometimes it's charcoal that we make in our wood stove. Sometimes it's hay, if we can, like basically anything that is absorbent and cheap, if we can get it. You'll see almost no weeds in the walkway.
Right.
And that is a management layer that we've basically erased. So if you go, I would need a tool to actually get to the bottom of this, but even if there were weeds in here, if you put enough mulch, it just erases them. And so until this breaks down and seeds fall into it, it basically gives us a year off from having to do any weeding in our walkways.
And it's so much better than somebody like purchasing some kind of geotextile fabric and like tossing it over, which is the typical way people would, manage weeds or pesticides or, or herbicides or something like that.
Yeah, black plastic mulch, we wouldn't, after a year, scrape it up and put it in a garden bed and seed it to carrots. Yeah. But this we might.
I think you'd have to be careful about where you're getting your sawdust from though, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's the kind of the due diligence thing with any material, like horse manure. Well, do they use dewormer? That's a concern. And the sawdust, well, is it pressure treated lumber? So in this case, it's a place that provides firewood, and they use a huge circular saw and they just lubricate with water. And he even brought over a little Ziploc bag of the materials, like it's 50% maple and 30% ash. So he's really into his product. Yeah. And so I said, it's sold, we'll take it. We do find it robs nitrogen from the beds if we include it too early. Yeah. So the lesson definitively learned is to let it rest for at least a full year. The last round we put in after 6 months, and a lot of the beds suffered from that. They'll be good later, but we lose productivity for a little while.
Got it. Do you see when does it sap out the nitrogen to the point where it's just slower growing, or it's
there's yellowing in the leaves. There's kind of like, I don't know how to describe it other than like there's an ennui, like the plants just are like, that kale's been there for 2 months and it's that big and it's not, it's just sitting. It's kind of waiting for something to happen, and that's it more than anything. Like they'll survive, but they won't thrive. And so then it's really a time scale game of just waiting for it to maturate and be ready. So we won't get more sawdust this year. We'll wait for leaf bag season or get more mulch hay or something that'll liberate nutrients a little bit faster.
So plantains and everything like that, is that something that you just like allow in and you're like, I could use that? Or is it just something like, I love to hear your distinction between what would we consider weedy and what could we consider something that we could use?
Well, so sometimes when plantains show up, we pull them if they're in the way of another bed. In this case, you're looking at, this is actually a plantain, it's called Turkish plantain, and it's a perennial vegetable.
It's very broad-leaved,
Really big broadleaf plantain that a friend of ours, my friend Jonathan Bates, down in Brooktondale shared with us. And so plantains like to grow here anyway. And so we found a culinary perennial not even an analog, it is just a varietal of plantain. And so the garden's already suggested to us, hey, dandelions do well here. Cool, we'll get a variety of lettuce that's very similar to dandelions. Plantains do well, let's get a variety that we can eat. So we just had it for a little while and we're still learning about it.
Is this shiso?
Yeah, shiso has naturalized a bit. And that's definitely a weed now in that it shows up where we didn't expect it or we didn't necessarily want it, but it's so beautiful.
It's so beautiful. Look at the flowers even. It's gorgeous.
They're crazy.
Yeah.
So we would hope we could get more of the green shiso because that one's a little harder to grow.
Yeah.
But red, this is the one that will naturalize, so we're just happy to have it.
Now, do you find, because it's so diverse of an ecosystem, and let's walk through so we could see some more, but is the fact that it's so diverse, do you find that you have very little pest pressures here?
No, we still do.
You do?
Well, pest as in, we don't have issues with, worms and that kind of thing, but I don't know if I'd call them pests. We have other actors in the landscape that also make their livelihood from here. Like rabbits have been coming in lately and hammering stuff. So we have to figure out what that's going to be about.
Right.
There's some groundhogs on the outside of the fence that are like really working on tomato plants.
Really pesky, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a game of figuring out, are we going to hunt them for meat? Are we going to just let it be?
Yeah.
Do we just, the things that they like the most, do we put in a consolidated area that we can fence off and let the rest of it be free choice for everyone? There's no like fungal or disease, that kind of issue. There's no real bug sort of issue. The wild birds take care of those, but there's definitely other herbivores that like our garden. And we're just always trying to find that balance.
The four-legged kind.
Yeah, I mean, in general, we're so overloaded with plant material to deal with that intervening
share a little.
Intervening feels hard to make the time to do that, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and you get some beautiful flowering plants here.
Yeah, these two beds are more nursery oriented, and the poplars and the cottonwoods and the tulip, those come out this fall. We just let them be here for 2 years and then we'll sell them or transplant them as just fast trees for other folks.
Yeah. Cottonwoods grow so fast.
So fast.
Yeah.
Most of these are 2 years old, and they'll be around 8 feet tall before this season's out. From seed is pretty stunning to be.
I'm always like impressed with the cottonwood because, you could see one with a huge trunk and you'd think it's 60 years old and it's like 20.
Right. They're fast. And the beautiful part with them in the landscape is they're the fast trees, they're the pioneers. They grow super fast and super fragile. They fall over, and then an oak is there, or a maple, or someone who can be there for the long run. So in our own designs, we work with fast trees to pioneer and hold the space, and then cut them to feed the chestnut or to feed the hickory or whoever's going to be there for the 100+ year horizon.
You do need water for these though, so you could, don't you? It's not really a dry.
Not a dry, although if people have dry sites, they can match the needs of these plants through mulch. So by all accounts, these plants should have suffered this year. It was very dry here, but the mulch held this winter's precipitation.
Yep.
And a lot of these beds have like woody cores. We do the Hugelkultur thing to some extent. So there's logs and debris and charcoal built into some of these beds, which is why the weeds do as well.
Describe that a little bit more for some of the viewers, because Hugelkultur is something that I've seen a number of people do. And with the mounds, so describe how you're doing it.
Let's say I'd like a raised bed, or I'd like a bed that will be a permanent bed in the landscape. I have no intention of tilling or running machines through it. When the bed is getting built, I take coarse logs, woody debris, old bones from the chicken yard, different debris that we have, charcoal, lay that first, and then soil and compost on top. And in the winter, the groundwater is high and it gets absorbed into the charcoal, into the logs. And then all summer, that's available as like a savings account of water that the plants can get access to. So there's fungal life, there's little creatures in there. It basically mimics woodland habitat, but in a little bit more productive way. So some of these beds have it, some don't. We've been making these beds randomly for the last 7 years, so I couldn't quite tell you how many of them have it. But when we start new beds, a lot of times we start with sticks and logs and then go up from there.
And have you had any challenge with your mints spreading like crazy, or do you like let them do what they do?
This is what happens. But so this is Monarda.
This is Monarda, right? Yeah.
Yeah, this is the Monarda fistulosa, which is the more native, really not as pleasant to eat, but better for the native. It's not as though we have something where it's like, oh, we only grow native. We grow all sorts of plants, but if there are natives available, we love to work with them. And so Monarda as a mentha family plant does not spread that aggressively, so that's helpful. Same thing with Anise hyssop. In fact, they're just marginally hardy here.
Sorry, I'm pulling off your leaves and smelling every single one.
Feel free
it's like
to nibble.
Scratch and sniff when you're in the garden.
But there's also, have you worked with Monarda punctata?
No, but is that what it is?
That's another
beautiful.
Monarda. This is a crazy
Are these
one.
like the bracts or the leaves?
I couldn't tell you.
Okay. Wow, it's soft.
They're just on the edge of the Monarda clan, and they're very slow to spread, but they're just so beautiful.
And now I can't really smell. I just smelled Monarda and then Anise hyssop and then this one, and I'm like confused. My nose is confused.
You can see the last. It's almost like an orchid style.
That's so
flower.
Beautiful.
Yeah, they're really special.
Oh my gosh, it's so gorgeous.
Yeah, these
Look
are
at
that sort of flower.
Looks like an Isoclades.
That sort of flower form seems incredibly helpful to butterflies and hummingbirds. So we try to have, without knowing the science of it or being really deep into it, we try to just find the hardiest perennials that have the most different types of flower form, and it seems like that's a good thing.
Do you use this for tea, or how do you prepare this? Or
so far, the Monarda punctata and fistulosa we're just growing to ramp up their numbers since they're slow. Monarda didyma, like the nice standard garden bee balm, we dry for tea, and Sasha uses as a culinary herb sometimes. I mean, it's kind of like a more floral oregano almost.
Yeah.
Part of the way we work with these is when we get new plants, new to us plants, we try to grow them and get them so they're really solidly locked into the landscape, and then begin harvesting and interact. Like, it's basically making sure they feel really settled, and then we start asking for parts of them to work with. But for the most part, this is just for them, and then for the wild creatures that enjoy. There's lots of different bees and bugs that come into this particular bed. I almost
get the sense of this plant that it has these like colorful leaves around the flowers, because the flowers are quite, they're creamy colored with little stipples of red. Yeah. And so this probably draws the bird or the bug in to it. And it seems to hold a little longer than, the regular Monarda.
Yeah, these are a little later flowering too. Yeah, it's almost like they're like beautiful landing pads.
Yeah, indeed. If I were a bug, I'd land on it.
Yeah, this is a nice bed for the pollinators. Have a lot of fun in this whole section. This we just put in last year, and so now there's enough inertia in this plant material, and it's filled the bed enough that we'll probably try to go through when it's dormant, lift most of these plants and actually divide them out so they like become more solidly in the garden.
Is there something that you've been meaning to grow but haven't gotten around to it yet? That you'd like to add?
All the plants.
Everything.
I mean, it's I think a productive obsession to collect more plants every year. Like, of all the things that you could get really into collecting. So it's basically in the winter months we try to sit and spend time. I just want to pause for 1 second, sorry. Yeah. Just so you know, 1 foot behind you No, you're good. Don't worry about what you're stepping on.
There's a puntia.
No, there's a hole there. You see where there's like some potatoes?
Oh.
There was a massive ground wasp nest.
Oh, there is wasps coming out of there, Sander, so don't step on that.
And I've soaked it. They seem to only really thrive when it's very dry.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to
They're coming out now.
Yeah,
so... Did I disturb it?
Yeah, you did. You
I was digging for potatoes and they wailed on me. It's a big nest.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll walk.
We'll walk around this way. It's a good thing that you know. You said it's a little disorganized in some cases, but you actually know where all the wasp nests are.
Well, I find them when they start stinging me, and then I'm learning that it's like they need the dryness.
Yeah.
So we're definitely never going to use a poison.
Yeah.
So it's just every day I dump like 2 gallons of water with the idea like, okay, maybe they'll leave. But
they're pollinators too, though, aren't they?
They're awesome.
Yeah.
But they hammer, like they go at you so hard that I feel like they could be the way I die. Like I've had a couple close calls with like 10, 20 stings, and like I had to sit and...
You need an EpiPen on you just in case.
Plantain.
Yeah.
Broadleaf.
Really?
It draws it out fast enough that I can feel like my heart is starting to like lose its rhythm a little.
Wow.
And with enough plantain on each sting and sitting and focusing on breathing, I'm good within a few minutes.
Oh my goodness.
It's
you got to be careful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A good reason to leave plantain around. Sometimes, like when I've weeded it enough, I'm cursing myself when I'm trying to find it. I'm like, wait a minute, I need this in order to live.
Yeah.
It's like I don't want it here. Like I need it to live.
You need it to grow right by all the wasp nests.
Just put some seed in the spring.
So borage, is that borage and this one right here?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow,
we don't seed.
Tall.
Actually the borage and the tulsi.
Yeah.
We don't explicitly seed anymore. They just keep showing up.
Wow.
Tulsi of the
you
basils.
Hit something that smelled really,
that's this one.
That just...
You should take a nibble if you'd like. It's really like very complex basil flavor.
Wow.
Really super medicinal.
Sander, you need to hit that. You'd love it.
It
has almost like a...
I smell it.
It has like a anise, but then a floral scent and a mint all together, all wrapped into one.
Medicinal bubblegum.
Yeah.
Something.
Yeah, it does have that little bubblegum flavor now that you mention it. It's really hard to describe.
It's so hard. It's basil. I mean, it's like it's interesting to have the standard Genovese basil right next to it. Like they are the same family.
Yeah.
But this lives so far out on the edge of it, and that's one that Sasha will dry and make tea of all winter. It's a lovely,
incredible.
Deep, nourishing tea.
But the flowers are just as good too if you...
Yeah, all the parts dried.
Oh, the flowers, wow.
Yeah.
Flowers are really intense.
Yeah, it's a special plant.
Is this lupine too?
Mm-hmm.
So pretty. I love lupine.
A little bit of an overpacked bed, you might say here.
Yeah, but looks happy.
And then these are more Seaberry. So there's the perennial nursery.
Do they spread by rhizome?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they're actually really aggressive.
Pop up over there somewhere, yeah.
But these will get lifted in the fall.
Yeah. You have to be on top of it.
Yeah, well, so nitrogen fixing, deer proof.
Yeah.
Incredibly flavorful, citrus-like, zone 2 hardy shrub. It's a high value plant.
Yeah.
And so the behavior of aggressively suckering and spreading is just, to me, icing on the cake. It's like, cool, every 2 years we can go through and dig up all the runners and have these beautiful plants that are known female or male because they're clonal, and people can set them, as long as it's full sun, other than that, they don't care. And no deer mess with them.
The birds must love the berries, though.
They don't go for them.
Really?
At least not here yet.
Maybe it's not a non-native, or they don't know it
It's
yet?
a non-native. The wild birds here, I think, it's not in their repertoire yet.
Yeah.
So we get to have it for a little while.
Yeah.
And then they'll figure it out, and hopefully we have enough then.
They're like, that guy keeps on eating that berry.
Yeah,
what do you think?
We should try that.
Maybe the blue jays will be the first.
So somebody will start getting, I mean, the birds have found the elderberries. We're thrilled for them. For that, we just get elderberries so fast, it's fine.
Yeah.
We get all we need pretty easily. Yeah, they clean up the currants. They don't like them until they're fermented. I think it's more like they like the boozy flavor rather than like the musky, meaty flavor that they have.
Oh, this is fantastic. Why don't we head back this way? Or do you want to? Where do you want to go?
Choose your own adventure garden.
Yeah, let's go around this way. towards
So this
that?
is a snake
Oh,
shape.
it's a snake. Okay.
So you got to
let's
go that way.
Oh, I got to go this way.
Or step over
I
the
need
snake's
to be
body.
left of the amaranth. Turn left.
Yeah.
Oh, and
Amaranth's
hollyhocks.
another one that we don't grow anymore.
My mom used to grow these, and I love.
They're cool.
I love them.
Yeah.
They get powdery mildew very easily, but
Yeah, this time of year, it's like, okay, they're wrapping up.
yeah.
But
the bumblebees love them. I always loved the bumblebees on them, and they get in the pollen, and the pollen starts just
Yeah.
dropping off.
they're a really, so Sasha's influence in here is, it's like we both have our affinities. There's
Yeah.
tons of overlap in what we want to grow.
Yeah.
But we have our kind of edges that we both like. And it's fun because all the plants, it's like we learn each season who all can work together. And it feels like the list keeps expanding.
Mm-hmm.
There's less and less of like, oh no, that never works with that. It's most plants like each other, it seems.
I mean, look at this asparagus growing right out of the
Right through a
currant bush.
Yeah. So this fall, so again with the nursery idea, it's like this is a single currant. We've learned definitively they do not need to be protected inside a fenced garden area from deer or anything. So there's not really a reason to keep such a large being in our main garden. It can go out to the wild. And so all summer I've just kept adding soil at the interior, kind of like it's a huge shrub potato.
Yeah.
And they root and root and root. And then in the fall we can dig this up, pull 25 or 30 divisions and set it out to an orchard, and then have the space to do, you know, the carrots, the kohlrabi, the stuff that needs a little bit more protection.
How deep would this rootstock be if you were to dig it up? Do you have an idea?
It'll be a project. This will be
Yeah.
a few hours to get out.
And you're doing it all by hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I have a King of Spades nursery spade, so it's all airplane steel and super sharp and really strong. And so when these plants are asleep, I can see more what's going on, and making a cut around the whole root ball is doable, and you can also use it to pry the plant out. This will have a really fibrous, not very deep, but very wide root system, and they're completely adapted to having the roots cut. So
Yeah.
as long as they're asleep, they're completely happy with it. And we'll have an asparagus we'll have to move to,
Yeah.
it looks like.
How old is this asparagus now? Because it does take a while to establish, huh?
These are probably, I would guess these are 4 or 5 years old. So
Okay.
certainly old enough to be productive. I mean, this is a great example of a design decision that I don't think was great on our part.
Okay.
Like asparagus is lovely, but there's only, 2-3 months out of the year that you're actively harvesting, and then the rest of the year they take up so much space.
Right.
And so I think this fall we'll lift these, divide if we can, and set them out. Our neighbors let us take basically piece by piece, we're removing the whole lawn and turning it into more garden.
Oh, wow.
And so all the asparagus will go out in like one huge bland monoculture of asparagus, because that just makes sense, it seems. Rather than, one here, one there, and then just this huge sprawling mess of wonderful plant.
The childhood home that I grew up in, both the garlic and the asparagus took over. But even now, 20 plus years since nobody lives there now, somebody else purchased it. When you mow the lawn, you could still see the asparagus coming up.
Yeah, they beat out lawn. That's part of the reason why I thought they would make sense out there, is we're coming out of lawn into perennial production, and asparagus feels like a pretty legit plant to do that work.
It's nice that your neighbor caught the bug.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It might be more that I think it's that he doesn't like mowing, doesn't really find it all that exciting or compelling, and as long as he doesn't have to do a lot of the stuff, then it's awesome. And he likes the aesthetic. He's gotten on board with the aesthetic that we have in here, and so we just manage it, and then any and all that he wants to harvest is there. I think it's going to be time to teach him all the different plants. He was like, "What's that one fruit that tastes like meat?" I was like, "Black currant." He's like, "I love that one. Let's get more of that." So
That's so cool.
yeah.
It's a good pollinator plant.
Yeah, it's another reminder that we have a fundamentally upland wet site.
Yeah.
They're all anywhere that we don't
look at all of them.
actively manage.
It's crazy.
this one little section, it's all stinging nettle, which
I see. But you could harvest that.
yeah,
right?
it's here for our medicine and food hopes. Yeah.
Is this stinging now? Like when when they're small, they're not as stinging though.
No, they're stingy all the time.
Oh.
Most of the time.
I thought when they're young, they're less stingy.
It could be. The stalks are.
It's the stalk that really.
Yeah, the leaves will have it too. If the thing with stinging nettle, if you harvest them pretty firmly.
Yeah.
And squeeze. So it's basically little needles, and if they're flattened out, they don't sting.
Yeah.
And then as a raw green, it's pretty nice. But this time of year, it's really very early spring, and then if you cut them after they seed, and they regrow in the fall, if you get the timing right, there's another fall flush that you can harvest. But they're really, for us, it's about having spring greens, like 6 to 8 weeks before annuals would even get going.
Yeah.
Like they're just so early.
Nasturtiums? Those are nice. They almost have those kind almost have this nice little red edging.
Yeah, that's a variety Sasha put in. It's Empress. It's some cultivar name.
They look hardier. They look like far more hardy.
And a little bit taller.
Yeah.
More upright.
Yeah.
Little Canada thistle. That could be one that we select out pretty easily.
Is that cardoon behind you?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
Not in bloom, but always a really impressive
Yeah, we just
thistle-like bloom.
We transplanted this one out. That's one we'd like to offer on the website at some point.
I love the growth structure of it.
They're so sturdy.
Yeah.
We've definitely learned in our garden, unless they're on the most raised of a bed,
Yeah.
their roots cannot handle how wet it is in the winter, and they die. They rot out.
So you have to raise them up then.
Yeah, this bed is just very raised.
Yeah.
And so we put this one here, it's very happy, and we'll see if it's raised enough for them to be happy over winter. They're definitely cold hardy enough to our area. Sasha's been cooking the stems in the spring, and it's nice.
Yeah.
It's bitter, it's funky, but it's a huge amount of food if you can crack the code on cooking those stems.
How does she prepare them?
You're gonna have to ask her.
Okay.
I'm not sure. Somehow magically, and then it's good. It's really good.
How much of your food do you harvest here? Like, how much are you supplementing, or do you feel like you're subsistence farming now, like for yourself?
No, I don't. We're nowhere near, everything we eat is from the garden.
Yeah.
But most, from March until November or so, most of the aspects of most of the meals comes from here. But we're not trying to get stuck on the idea that 100%. Quite often there'll be a meal where we sit down to an omelet with, eggs from the chickens, greens from here. And then it dawns on us, oh, cool, this whole thing is from here. But then we realize, wait a minute, we use butter.
Yeah.
And we use salt.
Yeah.
And so we're just being real, we barter a lot with folks for meat and for milk and for cheese, different things that in this small of a landscape, there's no way we could be doing ourselves. But the nursery has such high value that it can translate without money into most of our diet.
Did you set out with the idea of starting a nursery, or did you have plants like these tulip poplars and these cottonwoods just to kind of come up and you're like, okay, these are spreading like crazy, let me start a little nursery and sell these?
Yeah, the spirit of it's more the latter. This just happened in the last few years, so now we're working with that.
Yeah.
But so I started 15 years ago growing and exploring as many perennial vegetables and perennial just super hardy plants as I could find. And then one day, maybe it was around 10 years ago, someone was visiting and they asked, oh, do you ever sell plants? And just that morning I had dug raspberries that had completely taken over a walkway, and I was composting them. And so I said yes, and I went and got them, and they were still alive and fine. So I soaked them, I potted them up, and I called them up a few days later, and I was like, I have raspberries, and they're like, okay. And I just realized, well, if you set in motion these plant systems that are so abundant and wild and spreading and self-replicating, then the management work of just keeping up with all of that inertia of plants can translate into a livelihood. And then over the years, we realized it actually can translate into 100% of our whole income and maybe support other folks too.
Yeah.
All without having to shed any of our ethics. Like, we're not going to go down the route of drip tape and plastic and all that. It's like, if it can work in these sorts of contexts, we're happy to sell them. And then this way we sell plants that folks don't have to coddle in order for them to work in their context.
Yeah. Well, I really do appreciate that, because you have here a half an acre, and it seems like, you know, the earth is giving you the plants, and then you're figuring out how to work with them, which is just brilliant.
Yeah, people may or may not, like, just as the example, it's not like this is the thing we do, but these sorts of plants, I don't know if people will like to have these as an offering yet. And if they don't sell, that's fine. We could even cut them and use them as a mulch. It's not like every being is precious in here, but it's nice to acknowledge the value intrinsic to them.
Yeah.
And since this landscape wants to generate those sorts of plants, how can we work with that? I mean, if we're going to be calling ourselves a permaculture nursery, part of that is observing and interacting. Like, what is happening? How much can you adjust your own aesthetic or your own plans, your own goals to match what is already coming to pass, kind of thing.
Now, did you plant the cattail, or did they find themselves here?
They found themselves here. So lots of little hand-dug ponds in the garden just to catch. There's so much sheet flow of water certain times of year. And so this was actually bone dry up until the other day when we got like a ½ inch of rain.
Oh, pummeled with rain.
So much rain.
It was exciting, though.
Yeah, it was torrential, and then it was done. Maybe it was more than that. I didn't have a rain gauge set up.
Yeah.
But this is, so there's little silt catches, and all the hay soaks up moving soil. And then there's the little pond here. Basically, I kind of jokingly say, like, if you dig a pond, it's cattails and frogs are in there within 24 hours.
Yeah,
it's like they're floating in the air, just waiting for a wet spot.
Yeah, sometimes it's it's raining frogs.
Yeah. So we added in the arrow root, or the wapat.
Yep.
Said, I'm still trying to learn the names on some of these plants. We bring in all these plants all the time, and then it takes time for me to remember how to identify them. You know.
Well, and it looks like alder here as well. Is this alder?
This is a variety of hazelnut that looks really aldery.
And there's an alder there then.
And we've got alder as well. The alder we didn't plant. Those are all children from that tree.
Interesting.
Same picture. We'll sell them on the website if people want them. The hazelnut is, so this is more explicitly a nursery bed. With lettuces and mustards and whoever else on the edges, for us to eat. So, but yeah, the alders will have to start digging up. They grow so fast. At 2 years old, they basically will swamp a bed. So you kind of have to move them along.
And then this is your chard?
Those are some beets.
Beets, oh, nice.
That are getting ready to thin.
Yeah.
So we got some beets in here.
Do you use both the beet greens and the beets? Yeah.
This variety, this is early wonder tall top. So the greens are really nice. The beets themselves are pretty good. They look nice.
I mean, they look a little bit like chard.
A lot like chard. Yeah. And then there's beans in here. But then in the long run, there are high bush cranberry and gooseberry.
Oh, that's smart, planting the cranberry near the water.
Yeah.
Is it acidic soil or?
I don't know.
Yeah.
We never tested it.
Yeah.
It's probably a little on the acidic side.
The cranberries will tell you.
Yeah. We have like true bog cranberry.
Yeah.
Those are growing in some beds, but they really need a lot of support unless it's perfect context. This is actually a cranberry shrub. So this will ultimately get around 12 or 15 feet tall. And it's deliberately planted just to the south of this pond so that it'll shade and keep it cooler. So we have less evaporation, and then the little frogs that live in here will have more shelter and more space to relax.
That's nice, thinking of the beautiful amphibians here.
This context and the frog life that volunteers or enjoys being here is probably the number one reason why we don't have runaway slug pressure.
Yeah.
By all accounts, wet site, marginal-ish soils, deep, deep hay mulch, we should be overrun with slugs. But because there's holes that fill with water and frogs live in them, we end up having almost no slug. We have slugs, but the pressure is so minimal that we don't even worry about them.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so the frogs just work all day, every day. Well, except for that little one. There's one living. Sasha put these little glass bottles in there so they'd have little nooks and crannies.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
one enjoying.
Oh my goodness, look
A
at his
little roof.
face. Do you see that, Sonder?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Another way to use your mason jar or whatever the.
Yeah. It's an old gallon glass jar. There's
that's
probably a few down at the bottom for
Yeah.
fish, and we had fish in here, but these ponds are proving to be a little bit more variable.
Yeah.
So, and we've learned that fish eat frog eggs. So for now, it'll dry sometimes, it'll be wet sometimes,
Yeah.
and it's mainly for
Did
the
you
frogs.
try like tilapia or what did you try?
11-cent feeder fish from
Okay.
PetSmart, which did really well and got big and overwintered, and I think had a negative impact on the frogs.
Got it.
So,
Should we work our way to the front of your garden?
sure, yeah.
Okay.
Chickens.
I know, the chickens are going crazy. It's like, I laid an egg. Look at what I did.
I did it again.
I did it again.
It's been one day since I did it. Aren't you proud of me? This area is kind of crazy. This is a much younger garden. So the first area we were walking was where we began in 2013 together. And that garden, and it's interesting because that garden in some ways has the most challenges, like the weediest, or it's floods and then it's dry and nutrient issues. And so we kind of made lots of mistakes there so we can kind of get better as we move through the landscape. This area in 2015, the county decided to redo the road. It seemed unnecessary,
Yeah.
but they were ripping up all this stuff. They were cutting all these trees down.
Wow.
And so I caught them while they were cutting trees down and chipping them and said, hey, you could use our front yard as a place to dump your chips if you want.
Oh.
So in 2015, this was a wet lawn
Yeah.
with forsythia.
Yeah.
And they dumped about 80 yards of wood chips.
Wow.
It was like 10 feet tall and half the space.
You're like, free resources.
Yeah, they got stuck a few times because it was so wet and it's just
Yeah.
like this sad, pale lawn. And so then we just spread all the wood chips out, that erased the lawn, took all the forsythia that was growing here, chopped it up, and laid it all out where this band is,
Yeah.
and put the chips on top. So it's a really rough hugel mound. There was a wild apple growing here.
Good. Is it a good, tasty one or is it?
We grafted it over to 10 varieties.
Oh, wow.
So these are Macone, they're like cider apples in
Yeah.
here. There's keeping, these are both keepsake actually.
Okay.
So these were grafted in 2016. This is all the graft. We added in the mulberries, which just exploded, elderberry, sorry. Those grew like crazy 3 or 4 years ago. And they're on the north side of our firewood shed so that when people drive by, they don't see. I mean, it's a pretty ragamuffin shed, but it works.
Yeah.
And then basically started shaping up permanent beds here. This is close enough to the road and there's enough truck traffic that we're not that psyched to grow a lot of our food this close.
Right.
So this has kind of evolved, devolved, shifted, whatever, into all large, powerful perennial plants for the nursery.
That are also sound barriers.
Yeah, that are
Sound dampening.
bit of a sound dampening,
Yeah.
yeah. And then the living wall is our last, like basically our last line of defense from air quality and visual pollution, and a little bit of air or a little bit of sound protection. You might get a kick out of it. I don't know if you can fit through here very easily. But this is a pretty fun So if you can imagine, when they redid the road, all along the road, it was just completely denuded, beat up sand. I mean, it was topsoil, but it was really beat up.
Yeah.
And I intercepted the people. They were driving down the road after they did all the work with this big machine with a guy standing on the back with like, it looked like a gun that was spraying this blue paste on the sand, which I guess was some mix of grass seed and fertilizer or something. I caught them right before they got here and said, wait, can you not spray ours? And they said, yeah, I guess so, as long as you plant it to something. But they didn't say what we had to plant it to. So this is what we put in instead of a lawn. These giant grasses.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where are you? Are you in the chicken coop?
We're in the living wall.
My goodness, I was like, where are you guys?
It's kind of fun to actually like be inside.
I kind of feel like a kid again.
It's pretty neat. So this is 5 years old, and the miscanthus grass actually stands all winter. Yeah. And then we cut it down and weave it into the chicken fence. So that's the chicken coops or chicken fence area is just on the other side of this.
This is an incredible grass, though.
Yeah.
You can't get rid of it, though, once you get it, have it,
Nope.
do you?
But this is a variety that doesn't set viable seed.
Oh,
And it's a clumping grass, so it absolutely expands, but it doesn't send up 20 feet away or whatever. And
it's like bamboo.
Yeah, and we can weave with it. You can make roofing out of it, walls. You can use it for firewood to like start little fires, cook with. These are 5-year-old stalks. They take forever to break down. And basically, within a few years, we had 100% visual barrier from the road because of these plants.
Hello? Hi. What's going on? I'm over here on the other side.
And then we got grapes. They're not ripe yet, but there's grapes all through.
Is this
They're getting
hops?
there. They need another 2 weeks. There's hops as well.
Oh my goodness. Do you do your own brewing?
A little bit.
Yeah.
Sasha's starting to get into it.
Cool.
She was trying it for tea. She actually made a hops ice cream. It was vanilla ice cream with hops in it.
Wow.
It was so good.
Oh, wow. That sounds
It's like
interesting.
an IPA ice cream.
Wow.
Mainly, this little corridor is used by the wild birds. They come through and they eat the grapes. They love this stuff for nesting material.
yeah, I'd
they shred it
imagine
and like
so.
pull it
Wow.
apart. And when the hops are thick enough, they actually make their summer nests inside the hops because it's structurally sound for them.
I love that you have habitat for wild birds. It's just so cool.
They're wonderful beings,
Yeah.
and they protect our chickens.
Yeah.
Because they're being more wild, they're way more dialed into what's happening with hawks and other things. And so the chickens are real lackadaisical about it. They don't worry, but they hear the language of the wild birds.
Yeah.
And so when the wild bird says hawk, our chickens know to run.
Yeah.
And so the wild birds actually are like sentinels that protect our hens. And there's so much excess food in here that why not let them all be here?
Yeah.
It would be crazy not to share that. The winter we get starlings once in a while and they roost in with the chickens. After a while we get tired, like they will sleep, 2 or 3 starlings will sleep on a chicken.
No.
And they just poop on them.
No.
But it only happens when it's real cold. Like they just live, they're like 200 starlings that'll live in the coop for like a week or two
Oh
in
my
February and then they leave.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
The chickens deal with it, so we deal with it.
It's like a little blanket. It's a starling blanket. I do feel little raindrops now. You might be lucky and get a little bit more rain.
Yeah.
It's probably a passing rain cloud, but.
I don't think this will be significant.
Yeah. Now, what's your little greenhouse structure over here? What do you have growing in there?
This one's a little dry and, well, it is what it is.
Cucumbers maybe in there?
Yeah, we've got, so just like all of them, there's a random mix. So this is
where you come in the winter when you just want to get warmed up a little bit.
This is a style of hoop house that I've been working with now for 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
So they're made out of cattle panels. So the whole thing, it's 7.5 feet wide, it's 16 feet long, and it costs $150 for the whole thing, which is really
Wow.
nice. And the plastic, it's good quality greenhouse plastic, so it's the same plastic for all those years. And so this one, we've got some anise hyssop, not intentionally. I think it just showed up. We've got some of our tomatoes in here with kale undersown so that when the tomatoes come out, we've got greens for the winter. And we're doing some ginger, although they need a lot more water than we can provide.
Okay.
And then some cucumbers climbing
I
up.
see your ginger.
Yeah.
Here. Yeah.
They're there.
Yeah.
And then some fun stuff like Malabar spinach, which really needs the additional heat of a
Yeah.
high tunnel to thrive. And so that's a perennial, like tropical spinach.
Does it have a little bit more of a mucilaginous leaf?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a spinach okra vibe.
Yeah.
They're beautiful. More of
Very
a novelty,
nice.
not like
Yeah.
not a hardy thing that we're going to grow all the time. But
Yeah.
you know, there's a corner that's hard to reach. Cool, let's fill it out with Malabar
Yeah.
spinach.
It's
Maybe we
nice
get
to be
seed.
able to experiment too, you know, just say, how did this grow for us? And,
Yeah,
you know,
Yeah.
so it is a beautiful plant though.
they're crazy. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, the cattle panel high tunnel, I've been really thrilled with. It takes like 4 hours or so to build. It's $1 a square foot. They're pretty nice.
Well, is there anything else that you have a hankering to show us here?
I don't know. I mean, it's like the same. It's the same basic picture over and
Yeah.
over again. It's
Yeah.
just different cast of characters.
I love the sound that the wind is making through all the plant life here.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your garden with us.
It was our pleasure for sure.
Yeah, and then I know you do a YouTube channel as well, so if people want to know a little bit more about what you're doing, which one is that?
We are Edible Acres.
Okay, great.
Yeah, they can look for it and find it pretty easily.
And then if they're in the Finger Lakes area and you are selling some of these extra plants that are popping up,
Yeah.
when do you usually start selling them?
So we ship and do local sales when plants are asleep. So we
Okay.
do dormant sales in the fall and in the spring, and we normally update our inventory a few weeks before that begins, in part because we don't know exactly what we'll have until we get close.
Yeah.
We don't have like a known greenhouse. It's like, I think we've got 80 perennial leeks,
Yeah.
you know, that kind of thing. But yeah, if folks search for Edible Acres, they'll find all of our stuff that they might be interested in.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for spending the time with us.
It was our pleasure for sure. Thanks for coming out.
Thank you.
Yeah.